Drew. Hi,
Got me.
everybody.
Was mine 170.
We've got some people who probably need to mute themselves, but thanks everybody for joining us here to learn more about civil engineering. We want to keep this very conversational, so we're going to go over a bunch of different topics, but please use the chat. If you know how to use the raise hand function, please do that. And students, keep an eye out for that. If you could help me, that'd be great. We're here to hopefully excite you about civil engineering and answer any and all questions that you have. So don't hesitate to let us know what you want to know more about. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to kind of just kick it off and we'll go from there. So let me do that. Okay. Okay, so can you all see it? Do you see the full slide or do you see presenter view?
I see the full slide.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thanks again for joining us here to learn more about civil engineering. We hope that through this conversation that you gain a better insight into what civil engineering is all about and more specifically what that means here at Purdue. So we'll start off with some introductions. So I'm Sue Khalifa. I'm the Director of Student Experience in the School of Civil Engineering, the Lyles School of Civil Engineering here. And I am a civil engineer. I graduated from this program and then went out and worked in industry up in Chicago, designing buildings for about 20 years and buildings of all different shapes and sizes. So that's a little bit about me. And then I'm gonna let recent alum, Audra, tell us a little bit about herself.
Hey guys, my name is Audra Ripley. I graduated in May of 2018. So I've been working in the industry for 2.5 years. I grew up in Indiana, went to Purdue, love Purdue, go Boilers and Boiler Up. And ever since college, I have moved out to Denver, Colorado. I work with a company called Kimley Horn. We're one of the many civil consulting firms in the industry. And I work with their aviation department. So I specifically work on airport and airside design.
Great. We'll hear more from everybody soon. So now we're gonna let the students introduce themselves. Why don't we go Jasmine, Matt, Emily, and then JT.
I'm Jasmine Walker. I'm a junior here at Purdue. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I am studying architectural engineering here. I also have a minor in sustainable engineering and building information modeling.
I'm Matt Kennedy. I'm a senior studying civil engineering. My emphasis is in structures, and I'm also from Chicago.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Heiler. I'm a sophomore from Michigan, Metro Detroit, and I'm going to focus on transportation.
Hello, I'm JT Surisky. I am a junior from right outside of Philly, and my concentration is within structural engineering.
Awesome, thanks everybody. So that's our team for tonight. So kind of what do we do, right? So as civil engineers, what we do is we make an impact in every community. And we do this by designing and building systems that work to improve the infrastructure that we all use on a daily basis. So more specifically, what that means is we're looking at systems, or we're designing, excuse me, systems that allow people and goods to move safer and more efficiently. And so more specifically, what does that mean? Well, we work in design public transit systems. It could be systems such as this rail travel and a subway system. But you work on designing, building and maintaining harbors and ports. So how you get goods, we are very integral in that system. Additionally, freight rail systems, heavily involved in how things move around. Even more so, and Audra talked about this and we'll touch on it a lot more later, is you may not know it, but civil engineers are heavily involved in airport design, travel. And then maybe more traditionally recognizable to you, right, is design of roads and roadway systems. And that could even mean things like bike lanes and walk paths. And to kind of round it out, we also design bridges, and in many cases, right, those bridges support our rail and roadway systems. So we do more. We design systems that provide safe forms of shelter. And so that can look like anything from a single family home to a multi-family residence. We also design office buildings and high rises. Additionally, a big part of what we do is educational institutions, right? So places like Purdue or your schools in your neighborhoods. And also kind of big items like stadiums, heavily involved in all of that. So if you really break it down fundamentally, what we do as civil engineers is we design places where all of us kind of live, work, and play, okay? So what else? So we do more. So we design systems that protect our coastlines and waterways. So that could look like this. We design systems that protect against erosion and the effects of erosion. We also work to protect our natural waterways in systems of rivers, lakes, streams, and more. And then kind of similar but different is we create human-made waterways like this, right? So this is the canal system down in Indianapolis, and this was entirely engineered and built. So we work in many different projects. So there's even more. We design systems that supply cleaner forms of energy. So that could be integrally involved in the design, implementation, and maintenance of solar farms or wind farms, or hydroelectric power systems like this we're looking at the Hoover Dam, or even to different types of facilities like this, which happens to be a geothermal facility and uses the earth as an insulator. And gonna kind of round it out here. So we do all kinds of stuff. We design systems that provide clean water and sanitation. So you turn on the faucet and clean water comes out. Why? Because civil engineers are doing their job. And then that water goes down the drain and it ends up in a system we also design, right? The treatment of the water. So in this case, right, the full circle of the, the water supply system. So I just want to give a really high level view of what civil engineering is all about. And we'll get more specifics as we get into the different emphasis areas here, and then the individuals here today talk about the projects and things they've worked on. So I'm going to turn it over to JT now. JT, why don't you kind of kick us off on the emphasis areas?
Sure. So here at Purdue, we have 9 different emphasis areas within civil engineering. They're architecture, construction, environmental, geomatics, geotechnical, hydro, materials, structural, and transportation. And we also have general. We're going to go through and explain a little bit about each one, just to break it down a little bit for you to give you a more of a broader perspective of each one now.
Go ahead, Jasmine.
I was muted. The first one we're going to talk about is integrating the design, construction, and operation of buildings that's done in architectural engineering. So this has everything to do with building envelopes, mechanical HVACs, electrical, lighting, heat and mass transfer, systems and controls, everything that goes on in a building, basically architectural engineers have to touch. And to the right, you can see a picture of a tiny house, which is one of the research projects of a professor here on campus, where she studies how the air quality, the thermal comfort of the occupants in tiny homes is now being on the forefront since tiny homes are more prevalent.
Thanks, Jasmine. Yeah, that's a really cool research project that we're trying to organize some tours. So if you all are interested in visiting the tiny house, let us know. We'll get you on a list for a future tour we hope to have. Matt, go ahead with construction.
All right, so construction is obviously a very big industry. We see it more than we'd like to sometimes at Purdue. And so there's a lot that goes into it, and you have to, and construction engineers like manage the system to make it as efficient as possible. So what's known as like the 3 M's of construction are materials, money, manpower, and machinery. And so basically what a construction engineer does is manages all of those to get the most out of it. So cost estimation to make sure everything costs as cheap as it needs to be to get the whatever you're building done correctly. managing the materials and machinery. So everything goes in and out at the right time. And yes, it's yes, that's construction engineer.
Awesome, thanks. I like that, the M's, that's really awesome. Jasmine, if you could touch on environmental, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so environmental, you're going to focus on sustainability and improving the environment, water, land, and air. So this deals with the remediation of contaminants, water used, and solid waste treatment, as well as air pollution measurement and control.
So we're going to break up these because there's a lot of emphasis areas. So we're going to let Matt go. So Matt, why don't you talk a little bit about why you chose civil and kind of what fascinates you about it?
All right, so why I ended up choosing civil, since I came to Purdue for engineering, why I chose civil out of all of those. It really appealed to me, just like the projects of what I'd be building within civil engineering. Like a mechanical engineer, you could build something like an engine, or electrical engineer build circuits or something along the lines of that. But in civil, a lot of the things you work on are in very grand scale. You build a lot of big things that are very important. We obviously need roads and buildings and all of that. So just the grand scale of it all really just appealed to me. And then obviously I'm a senior now, so I've built up my knowledge in civil engineering. I've just enjoy it the more I do it.
I love it. I love hearing that. The more you're involved, the more joy you get out of it. That's fantastic. Thanks, Matt. JT, geomatics.
So with geomatics, we are focused on creating systems to collect, analyze, and use all this geospatial information about land, infrastructure, oceans, natural resources, our environment, and so much more. A lot of times this is seen as surveying, which is very commonly done in the field, as well as laser scanning, LiDAR technology.
Awesome. Thanks, JT. Okay, Matt, back to you.
All right, so the next emphasis that we're going to talk about here is geotechnical. So structure is what I do. I'll talk about that more later, but a lot of that is everything that goes up from the ground. Geotech is everything that goes into the ground. So whether that's foundations, slopes, retaining structures, dams, things like that, there's a lot of things that are important that we have to keep in the ground to hold things in place. And so geotech deals with a lot of soil mechanics, soil physics, and the properties of that and how it relates to whatever you're building. So geotechnical engineering has to do with a lot of that.
Wonderful, thanks. Jasmine, you want to touch on?
Yeah, so hydraulics deals with the properties, distribution, and circulation of water. So this is dealing with how we can prevent floods, supply water to cities, industry and irrigation, protect beaches and coastlines, and manage and redirect rivers. So anything that really deals with waters and water systems is dealt with in hydraulics.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, I guess you're up again. So go ahead, Jasmine. What do you think about civil, and yeah, tell us about it.
So I chose engineering because I love architecture, and I've always loved architecture. Been fascinated how like sky rises and skyscrapers just stand at like 20 stories high and things like that. And then traveling around the world in Eastern Europe, I saw a lot of from the 1500s, the 1600s, and I really fell in love with that. I also love problem solving, so I thought, why not marry the two and make the perfect major for me, architecture engineering. And then I love this major because it's so versatile and broad. So I get to do different things and maybe transform construction that are not necessarily architectural, but since I have a civil engineering background, I can apply my knowledge to these areas.
Awesome, thanks. JT, why don't you tell us about materials?
So in materials engineering, we're focused on improving our current materials and also creating new ones at the same time. So a lot of the materials that we try to improve are masonry, are asphalt, concrete, so much more. And these are mainly used with roads, factory coal, and sidewalks.
Yeah, and JT, like we're getting into 3D printing of materials and that kind of stuff, right?
A lot of really, really cool stuff's going on. Oh yes, absolutely.
Very cool, yeah. Okay, Matt, you're back up.
So structures, that's the emphasis that I'm in. So structures, as I said before, is basically building anything above the ground that you want to stay above the ground. So whether that's buildings, bridges, stadiums, dams, tunnels, all those things, you need a structural engineer. So it needs to be able to withstand not just the human loads that are in the building, people walking around, like furniture and different things that you have placed in buildings, and cars driving over bridges and stuff like that, but also natural forces, whether that's just rain or snow or even hurricanes and tornadoes and all of that. So structural engineering is something obviously I like a lot because that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Okay, Audra, you're up.
Awesome. So transportation, it includes, but it's not limited to traffic engineering, ITS, so intelligent transportation systems or intelligent traffic systems. I forget which one. Aviation, which is what I do, roadway design, highway design, roundabout design. So really getting people from point A to B safely.
Awesome. Okay, last question for the group right now. JT, what are your thoughts?
I chose civil engineering because I love problem solving, design, and also math and science principles. So for me, structural engineering was the perfect way to merge all of those. I'm also really focused on the fact that we get something tangible at the end of the day. So, you know, you may create and design something, but then you actually get to go and see it in real life, which is absolutely amazing. And then, you know, you get to kind of see your personal impact on other people too. So, you know, you're doing good for your community.
Yeah, thanks. I think I can summarize a bit what you all were saying is what's really impactful for you all connected to civil engineering is our connection to communities, our connection to society. We do big projects that affect how we all live. So, and I share that sentiment as well. Absolutely. Okay, so now we're gonna have everybody except me, they're going to talk about their projects and their background and things they're involved with. So we got time, guys. So go ahead, Audra.
Awesome.
Forward.
So my name again is Audra. I graduated in 2018. So since graduating, I've been working with a civil engineering firm called Kimley Horn. So aviation really is considered airport design within the civil engineering industry. So that can include, you know, planning, design, and construction, all those three. And it can also be divided between airside design and landside design. So airside design, which is what I do, we primarily focus on the design of runways, taxiways, aprons, hangars, really anything that the plane lands, takes off of, or is sitting on. So also like terminals and the aprons surrounding the terminal buildings. So we can just go through a few of the projects that I've worked on. And keep in mind as well, so with aviation, one of the most important things that we focus on is safety. And when I first started in this industry, everybody stressed the importance of understanding FOD, which is foreign object debris. So planes can suck up pieces of pavement that are crushed. They can suck up things left on the construction site like pins. So that's one of our priorities, is focusing on foreign object debris and trying to demote that and reduce that as much as possible, again, to promote safety. So we can move on to the next slide and I can show you guys some of the projects that I've worked on, which, yep, here we go. So this is Norfolk International Airport. It is outside of Norfolk, Virginia, which is close to Virginia Beach. So Norfolk International is unique in the sense that its main runway, 523, I believe I forget how long it is. It's pretty long. It takes in all the international aircraft coming in and out of the airport. They do have another runway, which is 1432, which you can see is intersecting with runway 523. But the important thing about this runway is that it takes in a bunch of military aircraft and a lot of military personnel who are being deployed overseas and being brought back home. So this runway can actually never be shut down. So any work that needs to be done on this runway has to be done during the nighttime. So that kind of presents a unique situation for all of us who's trying to design and who's trying to redo the runway work. So for instance, you can kind of see in the picture, runway 523 has that brand new fresh black asphalt. All of that work was done between the hours of, I believe, 12:15 a.m. and 5:15 a.m. every night last year, really. So we've kind of had to divide up the work for the runway into pieces. So last summer, they focused on the very middle center portion of that runway. And then the outsides of that middle portion were done the previous year. But there was a unique reaction going on with the concrete called ASR. And essentially it was developing like this jelly substance that was cracking the concrete even worse. And this runway hasn't really been touched for like 40 years, which is really unheard of. But that's why, you know, we really need to get this work done to promote safety again. But you can kind of see all the fresh asphalt there on Taxiway Charlie. So a huge priority with this project was implementing the FAA's new taxiway geometry criteria. And it was a really unique situation where we had more to the design, but we kind of had to cut back. Once COVID hit, we kind of lost some funding, so we had to do the redesign a little bit. The project would have included more, but again, with COVID and the lost funds, we weren't able to address everything. But overall, this construction project was completed last year, and it cost approximately $6.7 million. And that's just to construct it. So with aviation, you'll get to learn that our projects take a long time. They're very big scale. We have to work constantly with the FAA and the client, and they cost a lot of money. So moving on. Oh, do I have control over these slides, Sue? Or no? Oh, there we go. So this is the Leadville, Colorado airport, called Leadville Lake County Airport. It is high up in the mountains. It is actually North America's highest elevation airport at 9,943 feet, I think. And it's a beautiful airport where you can see, looking down this runway on the right, is Colorado's highest mountain, which is Elbert, which is over 14,000 feet high. But so this project was a bit smaller. This is a one runway airport, and it really takes in military aircraft and some GA aircraft. So a lot of the times they'll get people coming all over the country and the world to do some high elevation training to make sure that their aircraft can handle, you know, going up to elevations as high as 12, 13, 14,000 feet. So I have seen a Black Hawk come in here a few times, which is really cool. But so essentially this project included redoing the runway, the taxiways, and actually this pavement also hadn't been touched for like 20 years. So some of those cracks were getting really bad. So this project actually cost $4.6 million, which is quite a bit for such a small airport, but this is a really big project for them. So essentially they got a whole new airport out of this project. So we installed 6 inches of crushed aggregate base course on top of compacted subgrade. And then on top of all that, we installed, I believe, 6 inches of asphalt. But yeah, and then this construction took place from the summer of 2019 to last year, so fall 2020. And yeah, that's it for that. And then moving on, we can talk about the Aspen Airport. So most of these 2 projects that I just went through, these were mainly design and construction projects. So projects that were listed in the airport's master plan. So each airport has a plan saying, okay, this year we want to do this, this year we want to do that. So really we were just going through the design and the construction process. But for this project, this is more of a planning level, not quite as deep planning level as, you know, like a master plan or an ALP, which is an airport layout plan. But this program at Aspen, so this airport is the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport outside of Aspen, Colorado. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's a really popular big ski resort. You see famous people there all the time. But really our purpose for this project was to formulate construction costs and the phasing to essentially redevelop the whole airport. So a lot of things about this airport wasn't meeting FAA criteria, such as the runway to taxiway separation, wasn't meeting the specifications per the FAA. Part 77 was being violated due to the mountains that are right adjacent to the airport. So essentially leading into every airport, there are some imaginary surfaces that you have to keep clear for aircraft coming in and out. But also in general, the airport just wanted to increase their capacity and let in Boeing 737s instead of just, CRJ 700s, which are like the nice private jets. They wanted to bring in more commercial aircraft, and, in turn, Aspen as a community would bring in more money, more people would come skiing. So essentially the point of that. So they kind of necked it down to two different scenarios. They looked at this common ground scenario where they were going to shift the runway, or not the runway, the taxiway 80 feet to the east. Yes, that's east. So essentially you can see right here, they're having to do all the redevelopment where the terminal building was, where the FBO was, all these hangars. They would essentially have to redo all of that. The runway would stay put, but then they also have that west side development where all those private-based aircraft are. But with all that too, they kind of have to scrape into the mountain a bit, again, to meet Part 77 standards and to account for that development on the west side. So that was their first scenario. And then the next slide shows their post-COVID affordable scenario. So this was essentially that they were going to move the runway 80 feet. So they would still redo all the development, but they wouldn't essentially have to move it. So really the only thing that would move is the runway. But again, that makes it even worse with the Part 77 conditions. They would have to scrape even further into the mountains to satisfy that. But at least with this scenario, they could salvage some of that runway pavement, but that'd be kind of tricky where they would have to close the runway down sometimes instead of just a quick mill and overlay. And Aspen doesn't really like that idea. They want people constantly coming in. They don't want to shut down their whole one runway. But so essentially this scenario, the post-COVID affordable scenario where we're shifting the runway 80 feet, that would be approximately $386 million to redo all of that work that you see on your screen. And then the former scenario, which would be moving that taxiway, would cost approximately, I think, $426 million is what I wrote down. But so very pricey. But so essentially what I do, it's very big scale, very niche. A lot of people, even for the firm that I work for, don't know what aviation is, but it's pretty easy to understand. Like, someone has to build airports. But yeah, so in a nutshell, this is what I do. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that.
That was awesome. Thanks, Audra. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat. So fascinating. Such a different side of civil that we don't hear a ton about. So I'm really glad that we got to talk about that. So, okay, Matt, you're up. Let me know when you want me to forward slide.
All right, so as I've said before, I am in the emphasis of structures. I work for Perry and Associates, or I'm a co-op student with them, so I've done 4 co-op sessions with them. I've completed 4. I have another one in the summer. So if you could switch the next slide, some pictures from working there. So a lot of the work we do is with Chicago Public Schools. So doing work there. There's any problems with the buildings, whether it's there's a crack on the side of the building that they're worried about, or a lot of the schools there are around 100 or even longer than that years old. So buildings that are that old, things are going to start falling apart. There's going to be cracks and all that stuff. So renovations to buildings. If there's water leaks, we check to see whether there's a structural issue there. And so I'm able to go to a lot of these schools. A lot of what I did last fall was for big capital projects for like major renovations to buildings. There's a lot of engineers involved in like scoping out how much needs to be replaced because they're putting in a lot of money to this specific school for that year to redo it so they don't have to constantly go back to just put Band-Aids on a major issue. So it's roughly 10 schools. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of this, but I would go up on a mechanical lift and we'd go up to various openings in the building. We'd have a contractor take out a section of the brick. We'd look inside of the brick, see the conditions of the windows, part like cornices, a lot of different parts of the building. And we'd use that to determine the scale of the project, and how serious the issues were with the buildings. Um, I do like working a lot with Chicago Public Schools. I am from Chicago as well, so just that level just of involvement in the community I do enjoy a lot, because I do get to go into the buildings, like meet with the engineers and all that. And in terms of things you want to be as structurally sound as possible, elementary schools are pretty high up there, I think, in a lot of people's priorities. So it is nice to have that positive impact on the community. The picture on the left, I had a bit of involvement in this project. It was mostly another Purdue co-op who's just a year older than me, who just finished his time with Perry. So this Salvation Army building, which is also in Chicago, we had to do a structural assessment of that, basically make sure everything looks right, everything's structurally sound, nothing is going to fall apart. And so what he had to do is that water tower on top of the building, he went on top of the water tower, climbed all the way up there, and did basically a structural inspection, make sure there's not any like major cracks anywhere. If there was, map out where it is, take pictures of it, check out everything, make sure everything looks right, and then take all that information, give it to the project engineer, and they go from there, either signing off saying that's been inspected or recommending the various renovations that need to be done. But yeah, there's a lot, certainly a lot more to civil engineering than just sitting behind a desk and designing something. Being 8 stories up in the air, hanging off a water tower is certainly a lot different from that. So yeah. And I guess just the next slide are pictures of just some of my involvements around campus. I'm in Theta Tau, the engineering fraternity. I've been in there since I was a freshman. And then I've also been involved in NSLS, the National Society of Leadership and Success. I've been on the executive board to that since I was a freshman. So just a bit of my involvement around campus.
Go ahead, Jasmine.
Okay, hi. So I'm a junior. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so I had the privilege of working at AECOM Annapolis office. I was in their transportation team. And one of my major projects that I worked on there was providing uninterrupted power supply to traffic lights. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you guys can see the traffic light power supply. So say there's a heavy rainstorm or something happens where the power goes out. I was designing a box that would be attached to this system so that the power can still be on and the traffic and flow can continue so that people can get from place A to B perfectly. And then this summer, I'm going to be working, I don't know where yet, they're going to email me, let me know, but I'll be doing project controls, so cost estimation, scheduling, all that for one of their projects, I think in either Houston, Virginia, or Nashville. And then you can go to the next slide. Okay, and then these are just some of the places that I got to travel to at the summer before I came to Purdue. So I went to Slovakia, I went to Hungary, and then I was in Austria as well. And this is where I saw some of the beautiful architecture that I was talking about earlier. So the pictures wouldn't fit, but there's a lot of castles from the 1500s, 1600s. And these are just some of the pictures that I have. But yeah, this is a great time and definitely solidified why I want to do civil engineering. Okay, and you could go to the next slide. And then these are some of my involvements here at Purdue. So I'm in PSEF, which is the Purdue Student Engineering Foundation. I'm also in NSBE, which is the National Society of Black Engineers. And then in my free time, I love to play basketball. So usually when pre-COVID times are around, we would have intramural leagues and I would play. And we got to actually go to the championship in Mackey Arena one time or 2 times. But yeah, these are just some of the things that are involved in here on campus. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know.
You're up, JT.
So hello again, I'm JT, I'm a junior in structural. So previously I interned with the Delaware Department of Transportation in their bridge design division. So I worked specifically with a lot of wing wall design. We did a couple of cable stay bridges and then a lot of 3D modeling, which actually got me into minoring in BIM. I loved it so much. I did a couple rotations with their survey department there, as well as their bridge management teams, and also their transportation team, just to get a full holistic view of what goes on at the dots. And this was actually towards the end of the internship. We got to climb up. This is the Indian River Inlet Bridge in Delaware. It's between Bethany Beach and Rehoboth, if anybody knows where that is. I'm from Philly again, so not everybody knows the East Coast, but it's towards the bottom of Delaware. And yeah, this is my favorite bridge, I would have to say, in the state of Delaware. And it's about a 300+ foot climb. So you're all harnessed in, and you're climbing up one of the pillars. So yeah, we got to get a couple pictures up there, and just kind of be up there for a little bit. And they went over a little bit of history of the bridge with us and whatnot. So that was really cool, very interesting. I loved that internship. You can go to the next slide. So I've also studied abroad. I did, through the Honors College, I studied abroad in Italy, more northern Italy area. We went to the Grappas, Perdeno da Grappa to be specific, Cinque Terre, Florence, and Venice as well. So we got to go all around the country, which was a really great opportunity. I studied humanities credits, got humanities credits through civil from there. Was able to count them towards my degree, which was really awesome. We learned a little bit about Da Vinci, so I put a little bit of a civil engineering spin on some of his work. And then the picture on the right here is actually from our geomatics class that we take. Lab's a really big part of civil, so you'll at least have one lab every single semester that you're here. So it's a lot of hands-on learning, which was one of my favorite parts about it. And this was from our leveling, and after that we did our surveying unit. So that was I enjoyed those too. You can go to the next slide. So this is just some of my campus involvements. I'm a civil ambassador here, that's why I'm here with you guys today. And then I'm also involved in Habitat for Humanity, and I'm heavily involved within the Women in Engineering program. This is a bunch of us on the leadership team on the left here. I'm specifically with WeLink, so we do a lot of outreach to prospective students, but I'm also involved in a lot of mentoring here with them, and just advertising for a lot of you guys as well. And then on the right is just some of our Habitat for Humanity. We do coffee and canvas as fundraisers. So those are always fun. This is my friend Stella on the left, or on the right. Yeah, she's a really great painter.
Great, thanks, JT. Emily, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Emily. I'm a sophomore, and I'm going into transportation here at Purdue. So this summer, I started my co-op with WSP USA. Because of COVID and everything, I got sent immediately online. So I learned how to work from home almost immediately. So that's me on the right, working from my desk in my childhood bedroom. You can see a little bit on the computer what I mainly did this summer, because I was in Michigan away from my co-op in Indianapolis, was a lot of design work. So I designed sidewalks, I designed, I checked over designs from other PEs. We did bridge design, like a whole bunch of design work through CAD. And then right now in the spring, I'm on my second rotation, so I'm not actually taking classes right now. That is me on the left. That was about 2 weeks ago. I got to go survey some pipelines that we are redoing on Highway 1. So I got to take a little road trip and go survey that. So that was super fun. And that's really why I got into civil, is just the dynamic between you get to design and sit at home and have a desk job, but then you get to also go out in the field and experience so many different places where your company is located around the country, that kind of stuff. You move on to the next page, Sue. So here are some of my campus involvements. I am in Greek life. So that middle picture is me in front of my house. I love Purdue basketball, Purdue football. I am at every single game. So that was a pre-COVID game of basketball on the left with me and my friends. And then I'm also involved in Society of Women Engineers. I am was an outreach chair last semester. I worked mainly with kids in the area, creating STEM activities for them, getting them interested in STEM. But yeah.
So cool. And I love that picture of you like jumping, I don't know how many feet off the ground. That's pretty awesome. That's so great. Thank you all for sharing your stories and your love of civil engineering with us. Just so fascinating to hear about. So want to see if there's any questions from the crowd. Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Happy to entertain. We'll see if there's any questions right now. If not, gonna probably ask the students some questions. Sorry, I didn't tell you that before. So anybody have a question? We'll pause here for a minute. So the question is, what advice do you have for freshmen trying to get internships? So I'll throw that to anybody that wants to start it out.
I start too. One of the really awesome things about civil is that we actually have our own career fair in addition to the big career fairs that are IR and Expo. So I would definitely, reach out to them. And then we have a bunch of sites, or at least we have a site for just specifically civil internships that if you can go on, so you could probably direct you to that. We have a blog as well that has a bunch of resources on there. So I would just go there first for your first points. Go ahead, Audra.
I was just going to mention too, say if you're hunting down internships as a freshman, and say if you don't get one at the end of the year, don't be discouraged. I know very few people that had an internship after freshman year. Freshman year, you kind of develop that solid foundation for engineering in general, but until you kind of get into your more breadth courses during sophomore year, that's kind of when a lot of recruiters are also looking for interns, after their sophomore year, after they've developed that background. So don't get discouraged if you can't find something. Because like I remember back when I had just finished freshman year, I took 2 online classes and worked. So the internship will definitely come with time.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and then I'm going to share. JT brought up a good point. I've got a bunch of websites that I did pull up. So there's a number of what Dale said is absolutely the way to go. So you can get an internship as a freshman. It's possible. It may be less likely than as a sophomore or a junior, but we do have that career fair. Unfortunately, it passed. It was last semester virtually, but it'll come up again. But we also have a blog. And so students, if somebody could search it and drop it in the chat, that would be awesome. I'd appreciate that. But we have something, and every time we get job information, we put it up here. So it's constantly updated. So you can see last Thursday, there was a company that had internship and full-time offers. So we're seeing a lot of different things, and you can filter it. So if you wanted to filter of just internships, you could do that and see what we had. So there's just tons of opportunities, but I would just be totally proactive as much as possible and see what your opportunities are. And students, can you speak to the fact of kind of going to a career fair, maybe not getting the job that first time, but the people kind of recognize you, or it's that's something, right? Can you guys talk about that? Not everybody go first.
I can talk a little bit about that. So I'm a sophomore, so I was in your shoes just last year, and it was super intimidating. I went to the Civil Career Fair, I went to IR, I talked to a bunch of people, but unfortunately there wasn't a ton of opportunities for freshmen. But I gave my resume to people, I talked to them, I made connections with them, I sent follow-up emails so I could get my name in the door. Because those are the connections that will get you an internship next semester or next year. And these people do remember you. They love Purdue students. They love Purdue civil students, and they really want to build connections with you as well. So I still get emails from one of the companies that I put in just the first semester of my freshman year. I still get email updates for them like, hey, put in your resume for this. You put your name in the door. Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Okay, great question. Any other questions from the crowd? And I'll stop sharing for a minute just to see everybody's beautiful faces. Okay, after the awkward silence. So let's share again. And actually, you know what? I'm just going to do it from memory at this point. So JT, what was one of your hardest classes and why?
That is such a good question. Overall or just within civil engineering?
Dealer's choice.
Okay. So overall, I think I'd have to say mine would be engineering 161 and 162. I don't know if that still has the same course code. It's the Goss Scholars Now program. It was formerly called Honors Engineering. That was definitely a challenging class, but quite honestly, I think it prepared me so well for the semesters to come. You have to be very good with your time management. You have to rely on other people. You have to study with other people. Like engineering is teamwork. So at the end of the day, it teaches you to work with a lot of others. So I think that was my hardest, but most like challenging, but most rewarding class at the end of the day. And within civil, I think I would say I'm in geotechnical engineering right now. I think that would be probably a more challenging course. But I have a really, really amazing professor, so she makes it all the much better. Yeah, it's a lot of material all at once, and I do have to take 2 semesters of it. But it is super important, and she's a lot of visuals to help you understand a little bit better.
Very cool. Okay, Audra. So what is your day-to-day like? Like just as a working professional, what does that look like?
So especially within civil and with aviation being a part of transportation, one of the main softwares that you might end up dealing with within civil is AutoCAD. I actually really love AutoCAD. JT, you mentioning 161 and 162 reminded me of like 131 and 132 and learning MATLAB, and just MATLAB just never clicked for me. It was just too in-depth code. Like there's a reason why I didn't go for computer science, despite they get paid some big bucks. But the coding with AutoCAD isn't too rigorous like MATLAB, or at least, with 132, we went pretty in depth with MATLAB. It's not that in depth, but so a lot of AutoCAD. I reference the FAA's website a lot. So the FAA has a lot of guidance how they want things done. Like how they want their runway markings done and their taxiway markings. All of that has to be compliant with what the FAA wants. Unless if for whatever reason the airport authority that we're working with somehow says, no, we don't want that. So yeah, really dealing with AutoCAD. I deal with team members in Denver. I've been working a lot with team members in Chicago and helping out with them with some of their projects. But yeah, a lot of AutoCAD. Most of it is 2-dimensional. I just recently learned 3-dimensional grading. And some Excel and, quantifying costs for construction. So yeah, a lot of computer work, and on the occasion I'll go out on site. And with our sites being either a 2 hours drive versus Virginia, I actually still haven't been to Virginia Beach airport. But yeah, and then the occasional site visit. But
Perfect. Yeah. So Andrew, I think is going to share a screen. Yep. But we're going to stick around for some questions. So.
Ask them now while they're here.
Absolutely. We're happy to stay. So if you want to hang out with us and ask us questions, we'd absolutely love it.
So I was just kind of wondering how you guys figured out you wanted to do structural or infrastructure or architectural.
Should I start off since I'm unmuted? I can totally do that. My decision was pretty straightforward, at least going into civil. I was a huge nerd, still am, and I used to draw out maps all the time as a kid. It's really funny because my older sister sent me a picture of a map I drew of some like Bratz doll neighborhood, and I had like everything labeled and all the lots planned out. It's horrible, but and then I used to play with Legos a lot. Super fascinated with like bridges and constructing those out of the not plywood, balsa wood, and crafting with stuff like that. So I knew for a really long time that I wanted to do civil. But there was a multitude of like I'd be interested in structures, I'd be interested in transportation, and I kind of tested the waters a little bit by taking certain classes, and then like my internship experience. So like my first internship was after my sophomore year. It was with a smaller firm in Fort Worth, Texas. It was a 9-week, 3 rotational internship. So I got exposed to land development, which is what a lot of civil engineers do. And then, what was it? ITS, sort of like traffic engineering work. And I really liked everything that I did in that internship, but following that one, I was like, okay, I went with the smaller company, the smaller projects. How about we knock it up a little bit and work with the bigger company and the bigger jobs? And I knew that I wanted to do like some sort of aviation or like major highway design. I just always thought that was fascinating. So I landed a bigger internship or an internship with a bigger company in Chicago. And I specifically worked with their aviation team. Absolutely loved it. They actually threw me on some pavement management. So like I was talking about, FOD is a huge part of what we do in maintaining safety. So pavement management involves like going out to the airport, kind of inspecting it and saying, okay, well, these cracks over here are really bad, but this pavement looks good. And you're essentially assigning indice values to pavement to say, 100 would be perfect pavement, no cracks or anything, but 0 pavement could be enough for the FAA to shut you down because it's that bad. But they put me on that at Midway. I absolutely loved it. So beyond that, I was like, I'll move anywhere with whatever company I like, just as long as it's aviation. So here I am.
Awesome. Anybody else who wants to chime in? And then Trevor had a question that we'll hit up after that. So anybody else on kind of how they got to their emphasis area decision making process?
I'll go. I'm kind of off now. I kind of just knew. All right. Well, long story short, I had gotten a concussion my junior year of high school, and we had to like redo the entire back foundation of our house. So I got to work, like I was home all the time. So I got to talk to the structural engineer. So for me, that was awesome, right? Not so great for my parents, but like for me, super cool. Yeah, but that was long story short. I loved Legos as a kid too. And again, just kind of echoing what Audra said, like you can take a lot of classes here that, within civil, within that your sophomore year, that can kind of sway you one way or the other. So you can get a little bit of a sense for each sort of concentration, and talk to a lot of other students as well also helps, or even professors.
Awesome. Yeah, I think like you hit on the thing I was going to say, which is just talk to other students and sometimes upperclassmen, get involved in student organizations and, meet different people at different levels and talk to them. So we have a question. So Trevor was looking into the different concentrations, and construction was of interest. Matt, I'm just going to ask you, because you talked about construction, you can pivot or answer it. What would a career in construction look like with, civil engineering degree?
So unfortunately, I haven't had any like my own work experience in that. I don't know if any of the other people, any of the other ambassadors here have, but I do know several people who have done construction, civil engineering type internships. A lot of it is just like working underneath the other construction civil engineers, contacting the contractors, making sure bills are paid on time, going on site, making sure everything's going all right, communicating with either the contractor or the client or other engineers, make sure everything's going well. That's the basics of what I know. I don't know if anyone else can build on that.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of hit the fundamentals. So, yeah, Trevor, it can involve a lot of hands-on. I think it just depends on the piece of the puzzle. So, you'll be intricately involved with what's happening on site. So, it's more of managing the process, right? So, somebody, an owner will rely, right, on a construction management firm to build X thing. And so you're responsible for managing all aspects of the project. How do the materials get there? When do they get there? How is all this work getting done? Different subcontractors. What's the financing behind it? What's the schedule? Huge thing on the work that we do as civil engineers is schedule. Time is money. People say that, it's true. You will be on site, but when you say hands-on, you wouldn't be the person nailing the piece of wood to the wall. You would be managing the aspects of how that gets done, and that's done on the right time, and how much that costs, and how to factor that in. So hopefully that addresses your question. Trevor, if not, plug another chat in there. We've got a question from Cole. Do you take a class you bet, Trevor, in every concentration, or do you choose what to do? Very good question. I got a lot of smiling faces, but students, I'm not going to answer this one. or Audra, alums or students, hit it up.
I'm kind of a student, but no, actually, I never took a construction class, now that I think about it, and I never took an architectural class. So no, you don't have to take a class in every concentration. I took a lot of transportation classes, which, to concentrate, you have to take the 4 tech electives. And I took 5 in transportation. Kind of wish I took that extra one and took a different class just to see what else I liked. Like for instance, I really liked water. I just didn't really take any classes aside from 340 and 440, but yeah, you don't have to take a class in every concentration.
So does anybody want to talk about the flow chart real quick? I know, Andrew, I've got my eye on the clock, but hopefully you're willing to hang out with us for a few minutes to get some questions answered. So yeah, does anybody want to answer that question and tie it to kind of the chart you're looking at?
Yeah, I can. So basically your freshman year, you're going to be taking the basis FYE courses. And then once you get into civil your sophomore year, you'll be taking a plethora of courses, basically in the basis or background and some of the many concentrations. And then as you get into your junior and senior year, you may start to focus, or you may choose general, but you should focus on more of these yellow tech electives. So like choosing emphasis area and choosing emphasis area, if that's what you choose to do. And yeah, but basically you do get to choose. It's not like you have to take it in every, because there's so many, you're not like you have to take it in every one, but
You still there? Oh, we lost Jasmine. But yeah, what she was absolutely getting at. So Audra, there's a long, awesome conversation for you in chat. So I don't know if you want to hit that one up or. Yeah.
Well, hey, is it Amir? I think so. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Hi. Awesome. I love Denver. Let's see. Yes, it is very precise and organized work. I was getting so frustrated because I'm very precise and organized, and sometimes when I see other people's work that isn't so much, I'm like, oh. But I would say there's a decent amount of opportunity within Colorado. Especially you'll notice a trend with bigger cities. Like for instance, with the firm that I work for, the big cities that we work out of are like Chicago, Denver is a decent sized one. There's quite a bit in California. Florida actually has the biggest aviation program in the nation in comparison to any other state. So if you fly into any airport in Florida, it better be beautiful, because that's the one state in the country that spends the most money on their airports. So we have a lot of people in like Orlando, Tampa. I don't think we have anyone in Miami, but really major cities. And Colorado specifically, which, you know, airspace and like aeronautics can be associated with aviation to an extent, and Colorado's the biggest market for that. But yeah, there's a decent sized market in Colorado. So like, for instance, if you were to just look at Denver International, so I kind of referenced like an ALP and a master plan earlier. So that's like where an airport will lay out what they want to do within the next 10 to 20 years. Some of it is public information, some of it isn't. The Denver International one is, but so like Denver International, for instance, has 6 runways right now. Their master plan has 6 additional runways that they want to build, which is a lot. O'Hare has 8. I forget, I'm like spacing on the bigger ones, but like Denver International right now has 6. Denver International is also the biggest airport by area, not by like people coming in. That's Atlanta. But so Denver International, just as an example, has a lot that they want to do with their airports. And I believe in the state of Colorado, there's 70 plus airports that have to work with the FAA on what they want to do. So I would say there's plenty of opportunity within Colorado, but I will admit that just like any other industry, you know, the aviation industry has taken a little bit of a hit, but we're still able to do our jobs from home. But yeah, so I would say that there's quite a bit of opportunity here in Colorado. But yeah, so 6 new runways at Denver International within the 10, 20, 30, however many years. And then they have 3 concourses right now, so ABC, and then they want to add 2 more. So they have some plans for the future, and that's just that one airport. But yeah, using that as an example, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, that's great. And, Amir or Amir, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Yeah, he said they definitely have space for it. Yeah, I didn't know that Denver was like the largest landmass. I think it makes sense just because I've been there, and it's like you drive and 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 hit the airport.
I remember when I first came to Denver, and it was for my job interview. And I got the rental car. I was driving down the road that takes you from the airport to I-70, which I-70 comes all the way through Colorado from Indiana, by the way, fun fact. The road is called Pena Boulevard, and it takes you like maybe 10 miles max, but it's a long drive. And the thing that stinks about it is it's a 4-lane like highway pretty much, but they can't expand on it because it goes into the neighboring county. It's not Denver County. So that county wouldn't benefit by expanding the highway. They wouldn't get any revenue from it. So they're just not going to expand it. So like the first time I've never not seen Pena Boulevard just packed was when COVID happened and nobody was flying. So, but yeah, it's a huge airport, especially if like you look on Google Earth, they have plenty of room to build 6 more runways. So.
Nice. So we've got 2 other students left. Amir, or yeah, again, I'm sure I'm butchering your name, or Oluseyi. I'm really bad tonight with names. Anybody who's left, any last minute questions for us? We're here about the 5 minute after. I know that Andrew probably wants to.
And feel free if you have any questions. I got a LinkedIn, so add me.
Oh, there you go.
Add me with any questions.
So yeah, let's open it up for last questions here.